start a conversation. We'll just kind of see where it goes.
Great.
I got introduced to you. Well, I knew about you before, but I got introduced to you through Abe's Choose Difficult podcast
Yeah.
that you guys did several years ago, and your journey was fascinating. So, could you share like a pivotal moment from your life that kind of shaped your approach to life and business today? What was some of the things that you growing up that has
Right.
shaped what you do?
That's not fair. Uh, you're
Life's not fair, by the way.
No, I know we're in it now, Tony. We're in it, damn you. You're supposed to say that before, that way I can politely decline. When you ask, that's like saying, can my friend stay the night? And
This is true.
the friend, what are you gonna say? What are you gonna say? All right, there's two for me, and neither of them do I like talking about, but
Okay.
both of them I will. Number one, I think that you learn lessons in life that you don't understand what the lesson is until much later in life.
Mm,
But you don't unpack it when you're learning. You unpack
gotcha.
it someday, um, unfortunately, much later in life. As I get older, or more experienced, however you want to put it,
Okay.
I'll never be as old as Abe Shreve, but as I
No.
age, I'm catching the lesson faster. The first one, though, which helps me immensely in business and as a salesperson, which is what I've spent my entire life in. I was 5 years old. My mom sat my brother and I down and said, I never wanted to be a parent. And
Mm,
I've got the two of you. And from here on out, you can call me ma'am or Mrs. by your last name. If you're
that's
five,
heavy.
yeah, it's real heavy. And by the way, if you're 5 years old, you don't know that's heavy.
Mm,
If you're five, your only experience is this is what happens next. You and
okay.
I, the luxury today of hearing that story and saying that's heavy at five is the only experience you have. Um, there's a lot of people around the world who go to bed with a empty tummy and they're hungry.
Mm,
And you and I have the luxury of going, wow, that sounds really hard. But if you're living it, it doesn't sound hard. It's just your reality. So at five, mom said you can call me ma'am or Mrs. Ivan. And for the next couple of years, it was that. I didn't know that at the time, but I do know how bad it hurt. I knew how it felt.
okay.
That lives in a little box labeled rejection, where the where I learned the lesson. I was speaking on stage, and it was a KW event. There were a couple thousand people in the room, and I spoke for however long it was, and I was coming off the stage, and Tony, I was running to the bathroom because I really had to pee, because that's really important after. I mean, I
Oh yeah.
went on stage, for crying out loud. And so I'm just trying to boogie to the bathroom, and people are like walking up, and on one hand you're like, thank you so much. On the other hand, you're like, I gotta go. And this one guy, who I'll call a kid, which makes me feel old,
Okay.
kid goes, hey, Cody, I want to be just like you when I grow up. And I thought to myself, well, that's ridiculous because I know me. That's a terrible idea. And I said, what are you talking about? And he goes, I want to handle rejection just like you do. I want it to roll off my back like water off a duck. And I
Mm,
looked, and before you ever use like your outside voice and you should just use your inside voice.
yep.
Oh, I said, well, that's stupid. And he just kind of looked at me, and you could see it on his face. You could see that I was offending him. And you could see,
Mm,
in his eyes, he was walking up to someone he highly respected or looked at like a hero or whatever. And they say, don't meet your heroes. And I didn't make him feel good in the moment. I made him feel bad in the moment. So
okay.
I about that, but I didn't mean to. But it was just my reaction of that's stupid. And he looked at me, and I looked at him, and I said, hang on a second. You're not stupid. I said, maybe you are. I don't know you very well. You're not stupid, but that's a stupid comment. Can I tell you why?
Mm,
And then it cracked, and he went, well, yeah, of course. And I said, listen, I hope rejection hits you so infrequent in life that it knocks you flat on your ass. I hope that you never get used to rejection. I hope you never become numb to it. I hope that it always puts you right on your butt. I came home one day, and I mean, I've traveled for a long, long time as a speaker and a trainer and blah, 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 blah. And I came home from a trip once, and my wife at the time sat me down at the edge of the bed. You know how these conversations go.
Mm.
And she said, I don't know if I loved you in the beginning or not, but I know I don't love you right now. And I've been seeing somebody else. In that moment, the whole world stops spinning. And in that moment, that lives in a box called rejection.
Mm-hmm.
And I said to him, I said, I hope that it's so infrequent. You know, a dad that says, you're no longer my son, I disown you. That's rejection. A wife or a husband that says, you're not it for me anymore, that's rejection. An employer that says, you're terrible at your job, you're fired, that's rejection. A seller that says, I'll hire somebody else is not rejection. An agent that says, I'm not going to join your firm is not rejection. But it took until that moment of me coming off stage for me to ever have it click. Because
Ah.
experienced real rejection, nothing else stacked up to that. Nothing else was that big of a deal. It's like, cool, you're not going to hire me? No problem. At least you're not my mom saying, I can't call your mom no more. Like, compared to that, there was no real rejection. And so it allowed me my entire business career and my, sales career to not get wound up about that. I just don't take too much of it too serious. And I certainly don't take it personal. They just didn't choose me. While there's 7 billion out there, there's a whole lot. And
Yep.
I don't take it personal. And the second lesson, for me, I was probably, I would have been like 10, and I had this paper route. And now that I told you the first part of my mom's story, you won't be shocked to find out that from, like 8 years old, I moved out at 14, but from
Wow.
14, those 6 years, I think we lived in about 30 different homes.
Wow.
Moved a lot. And some of those times we lived like at a campground, which I was told we were camping. We weren't camping.
No.
Didn't have a place to stay. But I didn't know. At 9, like you just don't know, right? Or whatever. And so anyway, with all that being said, I think that most parents are probably doing the best they can at any given moment. And no parent wakes up and says, I'm going to do my worst today.
Let's hope not.
While the worst might happen, I don't know that it's the plan of very many. They're probably doing the anyway. I had this paper route because we had moved. I lived in Juneau, Alaska, and we had moved and moved and moved and moved. And I was tired of being the new kid in school, and it was really hard, all those things. And we moved to a new part of town, and the school I wanted to keep going to didn't have a, I mean, it was like, it was so far away that you couldn't just get a bus, you couldn't
Okay.
take. And so I had to get a bus pass, and the bus pass at the time was like $30 a month. And so I got a paper route. The problem was I got a paper, and this like my kids wouldn't even know what this story means because they don't know what a paper is because, well, they live in 2025, so we don't have newspaper anyway. But I was a
True.
boy, and I had gotten this paper out, and the newspaper, they had called me. I had to call them back, and they said, "Great, what's your address?" And I thought, oh, I didn't have an address in the paper route, and so
Ah.
I said, "Oh my gosh!" I said, I always get my address screwed up in my head. Can I call you in the morning? I'm going to double check with my mom." Which meant I had to go find one. So I took the city bus downtown. That's where I wanted to live, where I wanted to go to school. Took it downtown, and the streets that we used to live on, I started walking door to door, knocking on doors, and I kind of came up with a script pretty fast of, hey, I've got a paper route, used to live in the neighborhood. After I talked to 3 or 4 houses, I didn't know what this meant at the time, but after 3 or 4 doors, I started saying the same thing over and over again,
Okay.
which script. I just don't know that it was a good one. But I knocked on doors, and the script was like, hey, I need an address. I'm trying to stay in my school system. Tugs at the heartstrings.
Sure
Trying
it
to
does.
school system, and I need an address for the papers to come to every day. I knocked on doors. I don't know how many doors it was. It felt like a lot. It probably wasn't very many, but it sure felt like a lot. Knocked on one door, and this old lady answered the door. And I swear to you, Tony, if she wasn't 200 years old, she wasn't alive. Like, that's how old this woman was. And she was so nice, and her name was Ida.
Ida.
And she talked to me for a minute, and she looked at me like with this look in her eye that only a mom could have.
Mm.
which was, I'd do anything for you. That's just who she was. She goes, young man, of course you can have your papers delivered here. It'd be my pleasure. I just have one request. And I said, what is it? Like, I got to call the paper back in the morning. I'm going to make 100 and something bucks a month. When you're 10 years old, that makes you rich.
Absolutely.
10 years old. And so I said, anything, you name it. And she goes, you have to stop every once a week when you get your papers, because this paper out was every day. She goes, once a week, I just want you to come in and talk with me. I didn't know what that meant, but I found out pretty soon she was pretty lonely. Pretty soon that her family had moved away. She had nobody also. So we kind of became these kindred spirits a little bit. And it turned into more than once a week, because what I found was every time I would stop, and I got the paper out delivered there, every time I would stop once a week to do my due diligence with her and chat with her, she would feed me.
Ooh.
It was really good. And she also found out that I didn't have a lot of food at home, so she would send me with food. She'd send me away with an extra sandwich, which was awesome. Um, about 9 months into the paper route, I went to get my papers, and there were a couple of cars in the driveway, um, and Ida wasn't there. And a younger man, probably my age now, see what I did there? Answered the door, and it was her son. And you could imagine in the story what had happened. She passed away.
Sure.
And he said, are you Cody? And I said, yes. And my experience with adults at that point in my life was if they knew my name, I was in trouble.
Gotcha.
I said, yes. And he said, and he kind of like his lip quivered a little bit, and he kind of like this whole thing. And he said, Mom told us all about you. And she put in the will that you got to get your papers delivered to her.
Wow. That's tugging on the heartstrings. I can see it right now.
You can tell why I hate these stories, but here's the lesson. The lesson was, and I didn't get it at the time. I was 10, and I was trying to the ends justified the means. I didn't want to knock on doors and ask for somewhere to have my papers delivered, but I wanted to go to that school so bad. It didn't matter what I had to do. I read the MREA book one day, and Gary made the comment, in the face of a big enough why, the how doesn't matter. Well, click, click, click. That makes perfect sense today. But it didn't make sense when I was 10.
Sure.
When I was 10, I just wanted something so damn bad, it wouldn't have mattered what mountain you had to climb over. And so the lesson that taught me was to always be clear about what I wanted to achieve. The second lesson that taught me, which doesn't make any sense to anybody who's never heard that story, from me at least, is to be an Ida to someone. She was in my life only for a short period of time.
And she had a heck of an impact.
Yeah, huge impact. And so when you do that, then asking people, will you list with me? Or can I be your agent? Or will you join my firm? Or will you take Bold with me? Or can I be your coach? All of those questions are pretty small.
Yeah.
Compared to that. And my guess is every time I share this story in person, I always get the same comments afterwards. You're like, oh my gosh. They go, I can't believe that. I'm so sorry that happened. And it never resonates with me. I always say, thank you so much. That's a very nice, kind thing to say. On one hand, I would never want either of those things to happen to my kids.
Right.
The other hand, I'm really grateful it happened to their dad. Both those things are true, simultaneous.
Yep.
And we always, like, all of us want our kids' lives to be better than ours, or for them to have a leg up we didn't have, or we want them to have something we didn't have. And, and that's not bad. The challenge is that, you've heard the old saying that, good times create weak people, and weak people create hard times, and hard times create strong people. And so as much as I try for my kids to have a different life than me, every once in a while I'm like, am I helping you be strong enough? I am. But those are two lessons, and that was probably a very long-winded answer. But
it was a great answer, and I really appreciate that. That resonated with me a lot when I heard it on the podcast with Abe. So in the respect of our time, I really wanted to kind of dive into the new Onward Bold.
Oh, yes.
Why is that? Why change what's been a staple for a long time? And what's different about the Onward Bold from the old Bold? For somebody who doesn't know anything about it, I'm in step three and I'm getting a pretty good taste of it. It's been great.
Bold itself came out in 2009.
Okay.
In 2010, we started teaching it across the country. And I was one of the 4 or 5 first original Bold coaches that were teaching it across the country. And it was a really good program. It was designed for, think about 2009.
Oh yeah.
Expired listings everywhere, for sale by owners, short sales. Like, it was hard, right? And we kind of tweaked or rewrote portions of Bold as the markets dramatically shifted. By 2017 or 2018, we took all the expired stuff out of Bold.
Okay.
17 or 18, there was no expireds to call.
Correct.
And during COVID, you couldn't find an expired listing to save your soul. Like, there was no expired. Everything had 9 offers. And so what we found was, you ever show a house that's been remodeled, and you're like, hang on, I feel like that's 3 different tiles on top of old wood floor. It looks okay, but I kind of can see from the side, you've just put new stuff on the old stuff. Like, you didn't take, just kind of, put up new stuff.
Okay.
And so I started meeting with Gary about Bold, and I said, I think we need a whole new Bold. And he said, I've been thinking the same thing. So last year, we took months and months and months, about 6 of us, and as a team, we rewrote Bold. But we rewrote it not meaning what we'd always done before is we would look at the books and change them to make them more real for that market and that we were in, but we didn't do that. In fact, I walked in, here's what I did. I walked in to the meeting and I had like all the Bold books with me, like the old Bold material from all the
Okay.
And Gary looked at me and he goes, "What is that?" And it wasn't the first time he yelled at me, but it might have been the first time, but it wasn't the last time. And I said, "What do you?" I said, "Whoa, whoa, whoa." I said, we're writing Bold. Did I come to the wrong meeting?" And he looked at me and he said, "Cody, if we're writing Bold, we don't need the old books. We need fresh, clean paper." I don't know how I had never thought of it that way. I thought we're going to bring in these books and tweak them.
Gotcha.
Gary said we're going to rewrite Bold, and he's like, "I don't need the old books, man. I need clean, fresh paper for clean, fresh ideas." And I don't know how that hadn't occurred in my mind before.
Interesting.
Oh my gosh. And so he said, "Get those books out of here." And he said, "But keep them close. We can look at them when we're done if we want to." So I moved them all out of the room, and what we put up on the wall were clean sheets of paper, and we started ideating. How would we do it? We had to write it in such a way, or we chose to write it in such a way as if it hadn't existed before.
Interesting.
Came up with what we call the Onward Bold program, which is heavy on personal development.
Yep.
Heavy on who are you, because if you figure out who you are, it's very simple to figure out what you want to accomplish. And it's even simpler to land on what you have to do to accomplish that. If you understand very clearly who you are first. And it's kind of that old saying, and it's kind of cliche, but if you don't stand for something, you'll fall for anything. That was kind of one of the premises we wrote the course on, which was, what do you really stand for? What do you want from it? I could teach you 100 dialogues. I could show you 100 systems to sell more houses. But if you're not clear on who you are and where you're going, you won't care about those things. And you won't use them anyway. And so the Onward Bold is designed so that in a 6-week time frame, you get real clear on who you are, what you want to accomplish, and you can't get too far away from accountability. Get too far. If you hired a personal trainer to slap bad food out of your hand every time you had it, you'd be more fit. If you had a personal trainer that came to your house, drug you out of bed, and drove you to the gym, you'd be more fit. That's what Onward Bold was designed for. It was designed so that you do the growing, you do the building, but you just can't get away from that accountability. It's constant, right there. And so that's why we tell people take it once a year. If it's offered twice a year, take it twice a year. Go and take it in a different market. I tell people all the time, buy $100 plane ticket and take it in a feeder market that you have lots of referrals coming back and forth. Go take it in the city next door.
Love that.
And what you'll find is you're the only agent out of 100 who serves your market. You take it where you live, which is perfectly fine. Nobody in that room is going to send you referrals. But I live in Portland, Oregon,
Yeah,
Boston every week for my job at Maps. But I live in Portland. Well, Seattle is a 3-hour drive, and you can imagine the business that goes back and forth naturally from Seattle to Portland. Portland is.
absolutely.
I'd go take it in Seattle. It's a 3-hour drive, no big deal. I'm the only agent in that room that says, "Hey, all your referrals headed to Portland. You only need to know one person."
I'm your guy. I love that. Okay. We are at 4:30. I want to respect your time because I really appreciate you coming on. It's that's really great insight on the Onward Bold. I think that's really, really good. And I appreciate you taking it. I know you didn't want to get up at 5:30 in the morning to join us from the West Coast, which I totally get. But although Via Williams did, but I'm just saying,
Really?
just
Yeah.
yeah, no, it was. I really appreciate you coming on, and it's been and sharing your story. I think is important because people, get to know a little bit about you because you're just, your official title is.
Uh, Grand Poobah. I floated that to HR. They didn't think it was funny. Uh,
No,
I'm
I
the
thought it was funny.
Yeah. My official title is I'm the vice president of Maps Coaching,
Gotcha.
uh, and I have the
But
6 centers that I own as an operator.
gotcha. And so I think getting people to understand that there's a very human side to you. You're not just a higher up in the Keller Williams. There's a real story behind Cody, and I thought that was great that you shared that. So I know it was hard, but thank you for doing that. I really appreciate it.
Our company is that it's made up of real people.
Yeah, 100%. It's been, and I'll share this. I'll just leave you with this. I came here in 2017, left I've been in sales forever and had some health issues and got laid off. And it was a tough time. But I came to KW and it has been the best thing I ever did in my life. And it's changed my life. So I'm now a coach, a business coach, a PC, a QL instructor, and I'm sharing. I'm drinking the Kool-Aid
Yeah, me too. Me too.
because I know it matters and I know it works, and I want especially young people. I want young people to be exposed to what I've learned. This changed my life, but I don't want them to wait till they're 60 something years old like me.
Oh, I love that, and I love who you are in our company. So thank you for having me today.
Now I appreciate you being on, Cody. Thank you so much, and we'll talk soon. I'll make sure if I'm out in Portland, I'll make sure I look you up.
All right, Tony. We'll talk to
All
you soon.
right. Thank you, man. Take care.